Hey guys, welcome to your lesson on adolescence and moral development. So, we're going to start off by asking, what is adolescence? It is the transition period from childhood to adulthood, extending from puberty to independence. Anne Frank on adolescence. So, Anne Frank, writing in her diary while hiding from the Nazis, described tumultuous teen emotions. My treatment varies so much. One day, Anne is so sensible and is allowed to know everything, and the next day I hear that Anne is just a silly little goat who doesn't know anything at all and imagines that she's learned a wonderful lot from books. Oh, so many things bubble up inside me as I lie in bed having to put up with people I'm fed up with, who always misinterpret my intentions. It's a time when teens crave social acceptance, but often feel socially disconnected. 3 and 4 U.S. friendships started in 7th grade, dissolve by the time adolescents complete 8th grade. Think back, is this statistic true for you? After 30, many who grow up in independence, fostering Western cultures, look back on their teenage years as a time they would not want to relive, a time when their peers' social approval was imperative, their sense of direction in life was in flux, and their feeling of alienation from their parents was deepest. What is puberty? The period of sexual maturation during which a person becomes capable of reproducing. Just as in the earlier life stages, the sequence of physical changes in puberty, for example, breast buds and visible pubic hair before menarche, the first menstrual period in girls, or spermarchy, the first ejaculation in boys, is far more predictable than their timing. Some girls start their growth spurt at 9, some boys as late as age 16. How does early maturation impact boys? For boys, early maturation has mixed effects. Boys who are stronger and more athletic during their early teen years tend to be more popular, self-assured, and independent, though also more at risk for alcohol use, delinquency, and premature sexual activity. How does early maturation impact girls? For girls, early maturation can be a challenge. If a young girl's body and hormone-fed feelings are out of sync with her emotional maturity and her friends' physical development and experiences, she may be associating with older adolescents, suffering teasing or sexual harassment, and experience increased rumination with anxiety or depression. How does the brain change during puberty? An adolescent's brain is still a work in progress. Until puberty, brain cells increase their connections, like trees growing more roots and branches. Then, during adolescence, comes the selective pruning of unused neurons and connections. I like this cartoon. Young man, go to your room and stay there until your cerebral cortex matures. Well, that would be quite a long time. How do the frontal lobes develop? As teens mature, their frontal lobes also continue to develop. The continuing growth of myelin, the fatty tissue that forms around axons and speeds neurotransmission, enables better communication with other brain regions. So these developments bring improved judgment, impulse control, and long-term planning. Surveys of more than 7,000 American 12 to 24-year-olds reveal that sensation seeking peaks in the mid-teens, with impulse control developing more slowly as the frontal lobes mature. And this was a longitudinal study. How do adolescents think? During the early teen years, reasoning is often self-focused. Adolescents may think their private experiences are unique, something parents just could not understand. But Mom, you don't really know how it feels to be in love. Capable of thinking about their own thinking and about other people's thinking, they also begin imagining what others are thinking about them. How does reasoning change in later adolescence? So when adolescents achieve the intellectual summit that Jean Piaget called the formal operational stage, they apply their new abstract reasoning tools to the world around them. Adolescents may think about what is ideally possible and compare that with the imperfect reality of their society, their parents, and themselves. Older teens may debate human nature, good and evil, and truth and justice. Although on opposite sides of the immigration policy debate, these teens are all demonstrating their ability to think logically about abstract topics. According to Piaget, they are in the final cognitive stage of formal operations. What research has been conducted on moral development? Psychologist Lawrence Kohlberg posted moral dilemmas. For example, the Heinz dilemma, which questioned whether a person should steal medicines to save a loved one's life, and asked children, adolescents, and adults whether the action was right or wrong. His analysis of their answers led him to propose 3 basic levels of thinking: pre-conventional, conventional, and post-conventional. And just a side note, Kohlberg, his levels of development are posted in each of the classrooms. It's an orange poster, and it's basically you do things to because you don't want to get in trouble, or maybe because you want a reward, or because you want to please somebody else, or because you're a rule follower, because you're considerate of others. Or the highest level of moral development, according to Kohlberg, is that you have a personal code of behavior. Kohlberg's is an important stage theory. It's very important to understand that the stage you're in doesn't depend on what you decide to do, for example, steal the medicine. It depends on why you decide to do it. So here are the 3 stages of moral development that I just talked about. The pre-conventional morality is before age 9. That is self-interest, obey rules to avoid punishment or gain concrete rewards. If you save your dying wife, you'll be a hero, as an example. Conventional morality is early adolescence. Uphold laws and rules to gain social approval or maintain social order. If you steal the drug for her, everyone will think you're a criminal. And post-conventional is adolescence and beyond. Actions reflect belief in basic rights and self-defined ethical principles. People have a right to live. And Lawrence Kohlberg claimed these levels form a moral ladder. Are there criticisms of Kohlberg? Well, yes. Kohlberg's critics have noted that his post-conventional stage is culturally limited, appearing mostly among people from large societies that prize individualism. What is moral intuition? Psychologist Jonathan Haidt believes that much of our morality is rooted in moral intuitions, quick gut feelings, or effectively laden intuitions. According to his intuitionist view, the mind makes moral judgments in much the same way that it makes aesthetic judgments, quickly and automatically. Feelings of disgust or of elation trigger moral reasoning, says Haidt. So moving on, Erik Erikson, his stages of psychosocial development. So theorist Erik Erikson contended that each stage of life has its own psychosocial task, a crisis that needs resolution. So if you look at this diagram, or this table rather, which is in your notes, we start off with the stages which go with an age. Infancy, the issue is trust versus mistrust. Description of the task: if needs are dependably met, infants develop a sense of basic trust. Toddlerhood, 1 to 3 years, autonomy versus shame and doubt. Toddlers learn to exercise their will and do things for themselves, or they doubt their abilities. Preschool, 3 to 6, initiative versus guilt. Preschoolers learn to initiate tasks and carry out plans, or they feel guilty about their efforts to be independent. Elementary, 6 years to puberty, competence versus inferiority. Children learn the pleasure of applying themselves to tasks, or they feel inferior. Adolescence, teen years into the 20s, identity versus role confusion. Teenagers work at refining a sense of self by testing roles and then integrating them to form a single identity, or they become confused about who they are. Young adulthood, 20s to early 40s, intimacy versus isolation. Young adults struggle to form close relationships and to gain the capacity for intimate love, or they feel socially isolated. Middle adulthood, 40s to 60s, generativity versus stagnation. Middle-aged people discover a sense of contributing to the world, usually through family and work, or they may feel a lack of purpose if not. Late adulthood, late 60s and up, integrity versus despair. Reflecting on their lives, older adults may feel a sense of satisfaction or failure. So, what is one of the social tasks of adolescence? Young children wrestle with issues of trust, then autonomy, independence, then initiative. Sound familiar according to what we are doing in Montessori? School-age children strive for competence, feeling able and productive. That is, in Montessori language, the idea of valorization. Everything we're doing here is to help you all move towards valorization, which is a sense of feeling capable and confident in who you are as a person. Things like joy, confidence, initiative, independence, good judgment, self-discipline, ability to work with others, those are all characteristics that help explain valorization. For adolescents, the task is to synthesize past, present, and future possibilities into a clear sense of self or identity. What is identity? Our sense of self, according to Erik Erikson, the adolescent's task is to solidify a sense of self by testing and integrating various roles. Adolescents wonder, who am I as an individual? What do I want to do with my life? What values should I live by? Who do I believe in? Erikson called this quest the adolescent search for identity. How do adolescents explore identity? To refine their sense of identity, adolescents in individualist cultures usually try out different selves in different situations. They may act out one self at home, another with friends, and still another at school or online. What is self? By varying the way they look, adolescents try out different selves. What is social identity? The we aspect of our self-concept, the part of our answer to who am I, that comes from our group memberships. For both adolescents and adults, group identities are often formed by how we differ from those around us. Become familiar with Erik Erikson's stages of psychosocial development and be able to identify an individual that may be dealing with the issue in each stage. For example, a teenager may be dealing with the identity versus role confusion psychosocial task. What stage follows the identity versus role confusion? Erikson contended that adolescent identity formation, which continues into adulthood, is followed in young adulthood by a developing capacity for intimacy, the ability to form emotionally close relationships. What influences the development of healthy adult relationships? Those who enjoy high-quality, intimate, supportive relationships with family and friends tend also to enjoy similarly high-quality romantic relationships in adolescence, which set the stage for healthy adult relationships. Such relationships are, for most of us, a source of great pleasure. As Aristotle long ago recognized, we humans are the social animal. Relationships matter. How do peers influence adolescence? Well, adolescence is typically a time of diminishing parental influence and growing peer influence. 9 times out of 10, it's all about peer pressure. How close are teens to their parents? As adolescents in Western cultures seek to form their own identities, they begin to pull away from their parents, as seen in this graph. What does the research show regarding parent-teen conflict? So by adolescence, parent-child arguments occur more often, usually over mundane things, household chores, bedtime, homework. Conflict during the transition to adolescence tends to be greater with firstborn than with secondborn children, and greater with mothers than with fathers. Do peers matter? Most teens are herd animals. They talk, dress, and act more like their peers than their parents. What their friends are often become, and what everybody's doing, they often do. So for adolescents, peer approval matters. Do parents matter? Yeah, in other ways, parental approval matters too. Teens have seen their parents as influential in shaping their religious faith and in thinking about college and career choices. Most adolescents identify with their parents' political views. Emerging adulthood is a period from about 18 to mid-20s when many in Western cultures are no longer adolescents but have not yet achieved full independence as adults. I just don't know what to do with myself in that long stretch after college, but before Social Security. So what does it mean to be an emerging adult? No longer adolescents, these emerging adults having not yet assumed full adult responsibilities and independence feel in between. After high school, those who enter the job market or go to college may be managing their own time and priorities. Yet they may be doing so from their parents' home, unable to afford their own place and perhaps still emotionally dependent as well. Historically, when did adulthood begin? In the 1890s, the average interval between a woman's first menstrual period and marriage, which typically marked a transition to adulthood, was about 7 years. So not 7 years old, but 7 years from when a woman first got her period between that and marriage. So the first, if you can look on the screen, menarche, the first period was around almost 15, add 7 to 15, and that's when marriage. So 22 years in the 1890s. Today, by 2006, in industrialized countries, the gap between the first menstrual period and marriage had widened to about 14 years. So now we have menstrual periods starting a little over 12 years old, and 12 plus 14. So we're going to add and get about 26, a little over 26 years old for marriage. So the gap has widened to about 14 years. The next lesson we will go into is aging and adulthood.